Hadi, it was so great seeing and hearing from so many of our listeners in Leadville a couple of weeks ago. I had many encounters during the race where riders would call out the show and thank us for helping them make it to the starting line. It was really gratifying.
Yeah, I had the same experience in the feed zone and at the finish. Many grateful people from this community that is the Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Podcast. There are two reasons this show has made it through 7 seasons: listener support and the support of our sponsors, starting with the title sponsor of this show, and that is Shimano.
Yep, Shimano was there as we got through 25 episodes of race prep. They were in Leadville on race weekend to help racers before and during the race. So instead of talking about any specific product, I just want to say thank you. Thanks to Shimano for being a friend of this show, a friend to our listeners, and a friend to the Leadville Trail 100.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. It is season 7, episode 26 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
I'm Fatty, and I am no longer freaked out. This is an episode and an interview I have thought about for a few years now. We've interviewed winners of the Leadville 100 before, but this one's different. With us today is not just an athlete or a racer or a winner. This is, as Ken and Merrily would say, actual family. Melisa, it is great to have you on the show for, I think, the 3rd time now.
Yep, this will be number 3.
Actually, 4th time.
I think it's 4. We had a post-race
It's 4 with the
interview.
little one from last episode. Right.
Let's count them all now.
Oh, yeah. You're right. 4.
Yeah, you're
I'm a repeat.
You've been on almost as many times as Nate would.
Right, you're up there in Nate territory.
Wow. It's a competition now. How many more times can you get me on?
Keep winning. It'll be no problem.
Now, we would have had you on the show anyway, but of course, with you actually winning the Leadville 100, it became imperative that we get a full hour, an actual race recap of your race. But I don't want to start there. I don't want to start with a shotgun. I want to talk about leading up to this day. You've been working on this racing of the Leadville 100 in a general way for years, but in a very specific way for months and months. You brought your finish time down by an insane amount. Hottie, I think you've noted what Melisa's finish time since the progression has gone from, right?
Yeah, starting in 2016, and correct us if we're wrong here, Melisa. I think that was your first 10 hours, 12 minutes, actually, which is a great first time. A lot of our listeners out there would die for that race time. There was a missed time cut in 2017. I think I remember that year because you had injured yourself in a pre-ride somewhere. Yeah. And then
Cole's pre-ride.
Cole, thank you, Cole.
Yeah.
And then the Lead Challenge year was a 10-hour, 35-second ride. Beautiful, actually, considering all the events you're trying to juggle. And then here comes the real progression. 8:38 in 2019, 7:48 in 2021, good for 6th place. In fact, both those years were 6th place finishes. And then 2022 was 7:53.23, good for 10th place. And then last year, of course, you took it off because you were off racing the road. Sinful thing to do, go out and race the road as a mountain biker. But yeah, great. I mean, terrific, progression from first timer to winner. Oh, and this year, 7 hours and 10 minutes. The winning time, 7 hours and 10 minutes, right.
So a drop of 40 minutes, essentially, from your 2 fastest previous times. That is an insane amount for anyone to lose. But for a pro to drop that much time is truly extraordinary. What does it take in this, year-long buildup for you to, remove 40 minutes from this blisteringly fast time?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? When you're going all out, it's hard to think of where you could take time off. So for me, my last time being 7:52 in 2022, I I thought maybe that was the fastest I'd ever go at Leadville. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I actually was pretty sad after that finish, to be honest, because I've had this dream of winning Leadville, and I put in a lot of work in 2022. I had started with a new coach. We had been working on my weaknesses, which I had established was race starts, not being able to ride above threshold for very long, not really understanding my body at altitude. And I had tried to work on those things in 2022, and I came out with a slower time than I had in 2021, which was devastating for me. So fast forward a few, months or years, I actually decided that I would take a step away from my dream of winning Leadville and really focus on something else. So I decided with my manager, Nicola Cranmer, on my road team that I had been on for the last few years, that I would, instead of racing off-road, I would try to race on the road and see if that would help me become a more well-rounded athlete. And it did. It was a different stimulus. It allowed me to become a different kind of athlete. And I think that's what I needed to become faster and become able to win this race.
Yeah, you told us the last show when we had the short day after interview with you about how much the road helped you win the 2024 Leadville Trail 100. It's kind of one of those stories, right? You have to kind of step away from what you love to kind of get more engaged with it, get better at it, which seems like what you did. Tell me about your road experience actually real quick. I never got a clear understanding. What kind of rider, what was your role on Team 2024 on the road? What did they have you doing specifically? What was your job?
Yeah, I was mostly a domestique rider. I had ability to race as a GC rider a little bit because I was a pretty good time trialist naturally. I wasn't able to sort of perfect that discipline. I think there's a lot that goes into it that I hadn't had the opportunity to put in, but I am coached by a 3-time Olympian or a 3-time gold medalist in the time trial. So of course that emphasis was always there. And I mean, my training was always sort of directed toward that. And I was naturally kind of good at it to start with. For example, my first road stage race, which was Redlands, this was 2023. I was second in the time trial to my teammate, who's also coached by Kristen Armstrong, who is the 3-time gold medal Olympian of the time trial. And yeah, I mean, that was a really special day. It allowed both of us the opportunity to race for GC, but in the end, we decided to race for my teammate, Emily. I ended up third in GC at Redlands that year, which was amazing. I had no idea that would be the outcome of that race for me. I was thrilled. I didn't need to win that race. I was just excited to be a part of the race, which is something that I hadn't felt like I was in the 2022 Lifetime Grand Prix. I wasn't able to race at the front. So I felt like I had made a really big leeway starting 2023.
Yeah, I remember watching you in that race and feeling like, wow, that's, a nice, great, immediate success that doesn't always happen in the road for everybody. A lot of people struggle at the back, get spit out a lot. So hats off to you for jumping in and finding, a level of success right away. You also described about 2024, the Leadville 100, about that first group that kind of came together. And to me, I sensed, wow, that's a breakaway. That's a road-style breakaway. Were you a breakaway rider on the road as well?
I had a little opportunity to do that as well this year at Tour of the Gila. I was in I can't remember, like 60-mile or 65-mile breakaway on the final day of Tour of the Gila with Shayna Paulus. And yeah, I mean, I got the opportunity to race like that. But what I actually have realized from racing on the road is that off-road racing, these Lifetime Grand Prix events, they just feel like a 7-hour breakaway. It doesn't matter where you are. The whole race is a breakaway. It's hard. It's hard the whole time. It's never easy. There's no breaks. Drafting happens, but it's not prolonged enough that you feel like you're really recovering or anything like that. So, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
I often wonder, just because we like to think in context of our listeners who are not pros, what are the lessons for regular citizen racers here? Should we be spending more time on the road? Can you improve your Leadville prospects by joining some races, joining some crits, trying to actually improve your mountain biking ability by getting out on the road more?
I think that any race experience, short, long, this could be XCO style races. This could be throwing yourself into another race in preparation for Leadville. I think any style of racing is good for you. I think that road in particular, it makes you feel comfortable in a group, which happens a lot at Leadville.
Yeah.
It allows you to work more efficiently on the flat parts of the race, which there are a lot of those. I know you climb 12,000 feet in Leadville, but there's a lot of flat in there, and being able to save as much energy as possible is crucial out there, and being able to work in a group.
I don't think about it, but it sounds obvious on the face of it when you say it. To be better at racing, race more.
I learned
Practice.
that. I've had, 50 race days this year. I'm still a student of this sport, and I'm trying as hard as I can to crash course myself into being able to think tactically and give myself more situations where I can learn how to win.
That is a great key learning. Now I think we're ready to go to the starting line. Let's go ahead and talk about your day. Start us from the shotgun. Take us over Keevans. Take us through the day.
Yeah. So the start was pretty chill. Chill as in chilly, but also chill as in, man, I wasn't afraid. This is the first time I went down 6th Street and I wasn't afraid of crashing, of other riders being too aggressive. We were just rolling down. Everybody rolled down to the flat part before Keevans where you turn to dirt. And the pace increased to, as we all kind of fought for position onto the gravel part. But it was the nicest start I've ever had at Leadville.
Now, part of that is because you were near the front in the first place. Part of that is because there was a massive separation both in front of you and behind you, I would expect.
Correct. Yeah, I meant to add that in. We were a women's only start with, I haven't looked at how many riders, 40? I don't, how many pro
It
women?
felt like around 40?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Not massive. I felt like everyone knew what they were doing. We all had the same goal. No one was going to break away in that first 5 minutes trying to go for glory. It was, we were all just trying to safely get to the bottom of the climb where we knew the race would eventually start.
And the other part, when you say it felt chill, is you actually were going on feelings. You were using perception of effort, right? You had the same kind of metrics I had, which is none at all. No heart rate, no power meter. Right?
Yeah. I didn't race this year with a power meter or a heart rate monitor. I went solely on perceived effort. Yeah.
I can tell Hadi is wanting to say why.
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
I actually think this is a great lesson about knowing yourself and knowing how hard is hard. And Melisa clearly knows her body and how hard is hard. So, Melisa, why don't you just describe for the audience, like, is this pure feeling? Do you have a little scale going on in your head where you're constantly calculating and recalculating your effort? How do you describe for people how perceived exertion works in your favor?
Yeah, so I actually had the opportunity to race the stage race 2 weeks before Leadville, and I learned firsthand how not to start. Because I started so hard up Kevens at the stage race that I was like beginning to lose vision by the time I got to the turn. And I was like pedaling squares, and I wasn't sure if I was going to finish the first 40-mile stage.
Wow.
And I hadn't even made it to the top of Kevens yet, which was an amazing learning experience. I am so glad I didn't learn that on race day, because, yeah, I mean, I'm not the only one this happens to. So I took that effort and I kept it I bottled it up and I put it in the back of my brain, and I said, don't go there. Don't touch that spot. And so my perceived effort on the first climb was more hang in. Don't push the pace, because obviously you have an ability to push the pace so hard that you crack yourself. Don't push the pace to the point that you can't sustain it. Just follow. The race is not going to be won on Kevens.
I think I heard you say you wanted to be with the front ladies, but not at the front going over Kevens.
Right.
You didn't want to lead that group over. Just be there.
Yeah.
Right? That was kind of the whole goal.
Yeah, I was being fairly aggressive, trying to be second or third wheel, but yeah, never ever on the front.
Hey, since we're talking about speed real quick here, Fatty, another sponsor we'd like to thank is Envy. I was thinking about this going into Leadville, and this really has been the summer of Envy. The yellow jersey was won on Envy wheels, bars, and a stem. The Envy Melee won a stage in the Tour. And the guys in the Envy booth told me that their sponsored riders on the World Cup downhill scene have also been killing it. So hats off, or chapeau, to Envy on a great summer. You are a great wheel and carbon component company, and we are proud to call you one of our sponsors. Thank you, Envy.
Absolutely. And you can find Envy at enve.com. We're now at the top of Kevens. You've made this separation, and there is a pretty fast descent on pavement. Now, I have witnessed secondhand your descending ability, both on pavement and on dirt, and it has terrified me since you were a teenager. Now, of course, it is one of your real strengths. Do you have any idea what your top speed of the day was, and was it here?
No, I have no idea. I haven't looked.
Oh.
That I guess that is a metric that I would have had, but I haven't looked at that. I have no idea. I actually would guess that it wasn't my fastest time down that descent. We had grouped up. I think there were about 8 of us, pro women, that had come together at the top of Kevens. There was a small break of 4, and it slowed down a bit on the rollers at the top and had swelled to about 8 of us. And my perception was that we just rolled down the pavement, not aero. We were not on our top tubes. This was the first time I've just rolled down that descent. We were eating. I think we were all looking at each other like, okay, this is a move. This is the group.
Well, that's exactly the question that I had is what do pros do heading down toward Turquoise Lake? It's the folks around me, the people who are doing, the 9.5, 10-hour races are acting like this is the place where, the 3 seconds that they are going to make by getting into a super tuck, going down this pothole-ridden road is going to somehow make a difference to them. So it's interesting. The pros are using it as a place to recover, eat, and get ready for the next climb.
I mean, I do think that you can make up time there, which is maybe not what safety wants to hear, or I mean, like in a matter of safety. But yeah, I think you can make up 30 seconds if that's your strength there. But luckily, I didn't have to. It was great. Yeah, we were rolling along, just everybody kind of drinking, eating, etc. It was a great place for that.
So you've got 8 7 people besides yourself there in this group. At what point do you do a census? Are you starting to look at faces and see who's there, or are you bothering at that point and just riding?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I knew everybody in the group.
Okay.
I knew where I wanted to be in the group. I knew what wheels I would want to be on, where I wanted to be. But at that point, I mean, we were getting close to the top of Powerline, and my primary goal of the day was to descend to that first wheel.
Right. So I've heard you say this before, too. I don't know if it was a previous interview or to us. I can't remember. So, again, you wanted to be with the front group going over Kevins, and then first over Powerline, right? So how did you arrive at that strategy, and why did it work in this case?
Well, first of all, I did a no-no thing, which you guys both know about, but about 2 days before the race, I decided I wanted to change tires. And I only had the opportunity to ride them once before the race, and it was on a very dry day and I took them down Columbine. And they scared the crap out of me. They're not. I went from a Kenda booster, which is it has like pretty prominent tread. It's an XC tire, but it's not super fast on the road. I switched to a Kenda Rush, which has a little bit less tread, a little bit faster rolling resistance, and not that it's not grippy or anything, but it was a little bit less than what I was used to, and I scared myself coming down Columbine. So I went into the race scared. Mostly wanted to be first wheel because I wanted the opportunity to go my own pace, and I would be able to block other riders if they were feeling more comfortable. Luckily, I was descending extremely well that day, and it didn't necessarily matter. I was able to pull out something that I didn't know I had, which was a very fast time down Powerline. And
was it your fastest ever? Or
it was the fastest ever.
It wasn't just your fastest ever. You have the Powerline downhill QOM now.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So a real
I think
red letter day.
Tied was Sophia, who was chasing me at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, you two definitely, I would say, have a great frenemy situation where, I mean, you're obviously racing against each other and you're both fierce competitors. You also both make each other faster. I think that is amazing. I love that.
She's a good friend. Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so you do it. You are at the bottom of Powerline. You have stayed on your wheels, and you are at the front.
Yeah, so I had attacked over the top of Sugarloaf to make this move, and Sophia actually hadn't reacted fast enough. And it was me and Aaron Huck that had made it sort of with a little gap down Powerline, and Aaron Huck ended up flatting.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate because she was riding so well that day. Anyway, Sophia ended up descending extremely fast as well, but by the time I got to the bottom of Powerline, I had about 30 seconds on her, and I didn't want to be alone, so I sat up waiting on the pavement afterward. Yeah, just ate, chilled, soaked it in. The fact that I was the first rider, I was in the lead. It was so crazy. I was like, don't freak out.
And in that moment, are you actually alone, or have male racers started mixing in, either moving? I doubt that any silver corral racers would have caught you, but you've caught up with some of the men's gold corral.
Yeah, I don't think the men amateur started catching me until Powerline inbound, which didn't affect my race at all. When they passed me, there was no help. But yeah, I had to, on the descent, I passed a few of the pro men stragglers, and yeah, on the pavement, I was completely alone, but was eventually joined by Sophia, Michaela, and a few pro men that had been dropped.
And this, folks, is so hard to do, what Melisa did, to tell yourself to sit up when suddenly you find yourself in a lead. Even John Gaston, who finished second in the men's race, admitted later that he kind of blew this because Keegan got a flat, Lachlan got a flat. Those were the two guys he was with. Suddenly he was out in the lead and he went for it. He was first up Columbine, and what happened? He got caught by Keegan's going to catch
almost anyone.
He's going to catch anyone. He could race back there with Ty Hall and probably win the race. Nevertheless, it is such a hard thing to do, to tell yourself, I have to sit up here. I have to sit up and let people catch me. I mean, every racer's instinct is race, right? Go. But Melisa did the smart thing. You sit up and you let your group reform. Now, Melisa, we know eventually you ended up with Sophia and Michaela Thompson. So how did that all get? You're with Aaron, but how did it get sorted out where it was you, Sophia, and Michaela?
Yeah, so I was with Aaron going over the top, but she almost immediately flatted. So I was alone, and I could hear that I was alone. I could hear there was no wheels behind me, which was shocking. And then by the time I got to the bottom of Powerline, I didn't know what kind of gap I had, but I knew it wasn't large. It surely wasn't large because I knew that there were a few riders in the group of 8 that we had that were very strong descenders. So yeah, I knew I would eventually be joined by a few, and it didn't take long. I was joined by Sophia maybe a minute later. I really sat up and was like, okay, I'm just going to eat. I'm going to chill, let them catch me. And yeah, jumped on her wheel. And then when we entered the outward bound feed zone, I looked back and noticed Michaela had joined as well. Yep. So pretty soon after.
Sophia, Sophia we all know, but Michaela had raced her first Leadville the year prior. She's actually like an XCO racer. In fact, she got in the Leadville only because she had missed out on world championships for XCO, and she decided to give Leadville a go. She broke 9 hours, right? But she was like an 8.5 person. So here she is the following year in the front group. How much did you know about Michaela, either going in or at that point in the race?
Oh, I've known about Michaela. I haven't raced many Lifetime Grand Prix events since I exited at the end of 2022, but the few that I have, I've always been with Michaela. So I know how strong she is. And I knew that her ride at Sea Otter earlier this year, she had made the lead group that I didn't make. And yeah, I mean, that's telling she's very, very strong. I knew she was in for a really good day.
Over this year and in previous seasons as well, there has been a real drumbeat in this podcast about pacing. Race your own race, pace your own pace. But you are clearly treating this more as a marking competitors, staying with competitors, and using certain segments as strategic places to attack and race. Why this different approach? Why this, I would say, more of a team road strategy racing method, as opposed to just, I'm going to dial into a certain power and I'm going to stay there and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to win this race, and I knew going into it that in order to win, I would have to risk losing. I would have to risk blowing up. I would have to risk not having people to work with. It was a different game. I really didn't look at my clock at all. I had it showing on my Wahoo, but yeah, I didn't even look at it at the turnaround. I had no idea what kind of pace I was on.
You weren't racing clock. You were racing people.
Yeah, completely. And there's something to that as well. You have to be fully focused on what you're doing and not worrying about anything else. I was fully focused on the wheels of the girls that I was with. Nothing else.
So going back to Fatty's, this other person, I'm referring to myself as in the third person. Apparently that's something Fatty does now. So in Hotties in My Show, we are always talking about what we can learn from pros, what we can learn from each other. Is there a lesson for the normal citizen racer here? Someone like me, who I generally don't have any person that I care about, and how they do. I'm happy to have everyone get their own best time. Should we be should we be taking something from the way that you raced, or is it more just a pacing game for citizen racers?
I guess it sort of depends. Are you willing to risk not finishing in order to get a slightly faster time?
No.
I don't think you should be.
I'm not.
Yeah, I mean that was my strategy, and that doesn't have to be everyone's strategy. I think that there's a place for pacing here, and I obviously was pacing a bit. It's not like I mean on purpose I didn't go out so hard that I couldn't see my competitors at the top of Keevans. That's pacing a bit, but it's not the typical pacing that you would do at Leadville, being, start Keevans at a 2,
Right.
then Sugarloaf at a 3, then Columbine at a 3.5. Like, don't ever go into the red. It's not that for me, and it can't be.
Yeah, you spent some time in the red.
I spent probably 6.5 hours in the red.
All but 40 minutes in the red.
Yeah. Those 40 minutes were great.
Okay, let's go back to the Columbine mine, because that is, as you've described in our storytelling, just around the table, where this race really sort of made a turn for you.
Yeah, we approached Columbine, the 3 of us, and Sophia took the lead, and I knew she wanted to dictate the pace. I didn't know how she was feeling at that point. I couldn't really get I could tell she was very reactive. Anytime in the group I surged to the front, she always wanted to be right there, or she was like fighting me for the front of the group whenever it surged uphill. I could tell she was, to me, that meant she was feeling good, but I honestly couldn't tell. I knew that Michaela was kind of willing to sit back in the back. I didn't know if that meant that she was feeling good and was trying to reserve energy or be smart, or if that meant that she was uncomfortable. I couldn't tell. So as we approached Columbine, I sort of was trying to feel for cues from the other riders, because in my mind, I didn't know if I wanted to go here or not, or where I wanted to go. All I know is that I felt incredible, and that I was going to let my legs just take me wherever they were going to go. So we turned left to go up through the trees, which is about the bottom of the climb. There's a little spot that it starts to level off at a campground. And I think just before that, I sort of put in a little surge just to see where the other 2 riders were at. And I looked back and they were both gone.
Now, if I'm thinking of the place that you're describing, this is pretty early in the Columbine climb, and it is also notoriously steep. This is a place where generally people mistakenly think, oh, I better back it off for the whole climb because this whole thing's going to be 13%. Where in actuality, right before that campground, it kind of mellows out, and it's not as hard until you get to the goat trail. You have a ton of course knowledge. You've lived in Leadville. You've raced Leadville over and over. Was course knowledge a piece of this, or just I'm ready to go?
Perhaps. I mean, I knew that it would level off. Like I said, like I can describe in detail where on the course this happened because I know that climb so well. And perhaps the 2 other riders were not, they were scared to go that pace. I mean, I don't doubt that they were strong enough to stay with me. I know they could, but in that moment, maybe they weren't ready.
So you get your gap. Now take us through your reaction. I mean, obviously you still have, 60 miles to go to get it to the finish. That's a long game. We talked about sitting up earlier, how brave that can be at times and how important. What's going through your brain now?
Yeah, I mean, no power meter, just trotting along, and I could tell I was going fast because I was weaving through pro men. Yeah, they were shocked. It was crazy. It was an amazing feeling. It was incredible.
What do you say as you pass a pro man going up Columbine? Do you say on your left? Do you say, hey, how's it going? Do you just go by?
I think what I say to people is always a reflect of how I'm feeling at the moment. So if I'm feeling good, I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you? Like, great to see you. Good job. Or if I'm feeling bad, it's like, left.
So which were you
Stay
doing
right.
on this day?
I was feeling really great. So I actually had some short conversations with a few of the men that I passed. I actually knew some of them as well, which is kind of cool. I'm like, look at me.
So they recognized,
I can't.
Well, I will say that 20 miles later, as you came down, your mom and I had one of those unforgettable for the rest of our life moments. And I think it was amazing for you as well. Just the holy cow, look at where Melisa is, and we don't see anyone else. But I am curious. So when did you see Keegan? I
think before I got to the steeper, like upper part, it was kind of still in the flats. But I had heard that he was coming. I heard, I had a few, I don't know if motos or e-bikes near me, and I heard one of them say they're almost to the top, and I was pretty close to the bottom. Yeah. So it's like, wow. And then there was a massive gap to Keegan after that.
Fatty, when did you get your first update on Melisa? Where were you in the Hammer at the time?
We were getting updates via text message anytime she crossed a timing mat. And so we knew, and honestly, our location isn't really a part of the memory. It was more just sort of a collective, Lisa had her phone paired to her Garmin so that anytime Melisa crossed a timing mat, she would get a text. And sometimes, cell reception is better than others. And so they would occasionally bunch up a little bit as we would come back.
When did you know she was in the lead?
We knew she was in the lead just before we came to the base of Columbine. We had already gone through the aid station where you were, and we're about to do the first part of the climb when we saw an e-bike, I think, that was sort of riding with her, and we saw the helicopters circling around, and we both knew, we're like, okay, the helicopter is getting a shot of the lead woman, and we both at that point are crossing our fingers that it is Melisa, and it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one of those just outrageous moments. We both I'm going to start crying. We both just started yelling, and everyone around us knew why we were yelling because we had already been talking about her. And there she is. Melisa's got her 1,000-watt smile. And did you yell back? I can't remember whether you yelled anything.
That's all I was looking for down the descent was I knew you guys had pink shoulders. And so the whole time I'm looking for two people with pink shoulders, and I had no idea where to expect you guys. I was shocked at where it was, really. It was very near was it even on the climb yet?
It was just before the base of the Columbine climb. So it was in between Twin Lakes.
Yeah.
And, I believe we had gone through Twin Lakes alternate. And so we're just about ready to start the climb. So right, in that very small spot between that aid station and the climb, there you were. It might have even been sooner. Honestly, I remember the moment more than the location.
Yeah, me too.
Sure.
Me too.
But it was incredible. It was amazing. And then I started looking at the clock, right? Okay, here is the time. And, 1 minute, 2 minutes. Are we not seeing? I mean, we started talking. We're like, did we miss a woman? No, we hadn't missed a woman. 3+ minutes had gone by before we saw any other woman. And then we weren't even sure who it was. So we were just, our heads were spinning, and it is weird. I do not remember very much about the climb to the summit of Columbine because I got this massive adrenaline rush. I know that it was the same way for your mom. And we were just telling every single person that rode by us or that we rode by as we went up Columbine knew your story up to that point. So we were doing a lot of talking, a lot of celebrating. It was an amazing moment.
Yeah. I mean, if the finish line could have been right there. It would have been everything. I seriously, I say this, but I really mean it. I did not care if I won the race that day.
Yeah.
After this moment,
It felt like
this
we
was
had won
everything.
right then.
This was the finish line. This was everything.
100%.
It was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of those remember forever moments. So
Yeah.
the only way it could have been better is if you would have been just a hair faster and passed us right as we went through Hottie's aid station.
I'll try next,
And then you
next
could have
year.
been, you and Mrs. Hottie could have been there as well. It would have been a family
I think
reunion.
that would have made it complicated though.
Yeah, because I was trying to do a hand up, and that would have been odd.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, that hand up was easily one of the fastest I've ever done.
It hurt.
You came. It did hurt. I thought I was just going. Please, 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 please catch it as you were coming by. I don't. You must have been. It was over 25 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, you were just flying through that section of Twin Lakes Dam. I thought, oh boy, I hope she gets it because this is going to be really fast.
Yeah.
That is a high pressure hand up. That's one bottle. And I mean, let's, I think we are, I don't want to miss any important parts of the race, but I think that we are back at Twin Lakes. And you are this hand up from Hottie. Where else did you have hand ups?
I had someone at Pipeline. I did a hand up there first time through. Mm-hmm. I did a hand up at Twin Lakes on my way out, not from Hottie, from my fiance Jeff, who was at Twin Lakes proper. You were kind of toward the far end of Twin Lakes. I went up Columbine, came down, took a bottle from you, drank as much as I could, and then I took another bottle at the other side of Twin Lakes. And then, took a musette at Pipeline inbound with 2 bottles and a gel. Yeah.
That's awesome. So who handed you the musette?
Blake, my brother.
All right. Yeah. I definitely want to give a shout out to Blake.
Yeah, he was great.
Blake has done aid stations for all of us for, I don't know, any year that he hasn't raced himself. And, you know, he deserves a huge amount of credit just for the amazing job that he does.
Yeah, and he's
as crew
perfect.
chief.
I mean, he had no experience handing up a musette. It's different. I mean, he doesn't really have experience doing hand up for bottles because that's not how you guys do it either.
Right.
So
yeah. Well,
he was
we pulled
flawless. It was amazing. Yeah, it was perfect. Yep.
I wonder how families who are not as large as ours get all of this done. Because you had people pretty much anywhere on the course that you needed someone. So that is fantastic. So you go hauling through, take a bottle at 25 miles an hour. And I know because I saw it before the race itself that the way you would get your bottle is with a gel rubber banded to it. Is that right? So
yeah, that's actually why I ended up taking a bottle from Hottie and then another bottle like less than 5 minutes later is because I wanted the gels on them. I had an incident where I dropped 2 bottles up Keevan's, and so I was a bit behind on nutrition, and I needed to take as many gels as I could.
Yeah, we skipped over the double bottle fumble, which maybe we shouldn't have, because I mean, for one thing, I love that you as the winner of the Leadville 100 still made a double rookie mistake, right? That you don't act or pretend to be this untouchable, perfectly polished pro. You can reach for a bottle and be so cold or nervous or have so much adrenaline rolling that you can drop a bottle just like any of us can.
I'm like 90% disaster on race day, so 10% is all that's pulling me along. On Keevan's, my hands were so cold from the start that when I was partway up, I took a sip of my bottle that has 90 grams of carbs in it, almost all of my nutrition, and went to put it back in, fumbled it, and then 3 minutes later, I had another bottle, luckily, so I wasn't too worried. But 3 minutes later, took a sip of my second bottle, fumbled it as well, and made the split-second decision to keep rolling with the group that I was in. Shout out to this pro man that we caught at the top of St. Kevin's, who I rode up to and I said, "Hey, you can totally say no, but I dropped both my bottles. Could I have yours?" He handed me his, and with no hesitation handed me his, and I never saw him again, so I didn't get a chance to thank him. So if he's listening to this podcast, please reach out to Fatty. Please reach out to me somehow. Get to me, because I couldn't have done it without you.
We will reimburse you for
You can have 10 bottles.
For that bottle. Absolutely. We will find a way. We will reach out to the feed. They will hook you up. Speaking of the feed, on your helmet every race is the feed logo. Tell us, what were you eating during this day?
Yeah, the feed has been supporting me for 2.5 years, and it's incredible. I've had the opportunity to try so many different products to see what works for me, because everybody's different. Everybody prefers different things, different tastes, different quantities of carbs in different formats or whatever forms. So I ended up coming to the conclusion that I like to be able to drink most of my calories. And I have been doing that through First Endurance High Carb Drink Mix, which you can find on the feed, as well as their liquid shots, which are 30 grams of carbs per gel. First Endurance as well, also found at the feed. Yeah, it's a good combo for me. Simple, easy, get it done.
And you like Sturker bars as well, right?
I love Sturker bars. They're my favorite. I actually had one in my pocket as a sort of like, if nothing else is going down, at least I have this treat. Mm-hmm. Because they are a treat. I actually had a Sturker bar as my dessert snack the night before Leadville, because they are that good.
They're recreationally delicious. I have not tried one yet, although I did have about, I think, 20 Sturker 50 gels, because I mistakenly understood what you were saying you really liked. So yeah, we talked about this in the last episode, but yeah, a Sturker 50 every half hour, and I was out there for 10 hours. So yeah, that's 20.
50 grams in a gel is incredible. Mm-hmm. I think that is so cool.
Goes down easy. So yeah. I'm still a fan. Hadi will know, and you might as well. By the time I finished the race, I had a difficult time getting off the saddle every time that I stood up, because so much gel had leaked out of the empties in my pocket. They had actually soaked down my shorts and into my chamois, so that I was adhering to my saddle. I was sticking every single time. It took some serious washing to do that. Not Sturker's fault, not the feed's fault, but just...
That's interesting. I wonder if it's because they're just so large. It's hard to get all of it
out. Was me. In a normal day, I am pretty particular in how I handle empties. I sort of roll them up so that the opening is in the center. Mm-hmm. On that race day, toward the end, I was finishing and just cramming it into my middle jersey pocket. Yeah. And so, it was just me being exhausted and not tidy and paying the price.
Yeah. When I race, I put my empties, I wear a skin suit, and I have like a little pocket in the front where the zipper goes, and I shove all of my empties up there. I have scars on my stomach from them cutting my stomach.
Because those are sharp.
They are. They're so sharp.
I've cut my tongue on the on the opening of gel packs before. Not with Sturker, but with Martin in particular. I've been a huge fan of Martin since they've come out, but those guys don't put a lot of work into their opening mechanism, and it just comes out. It's like you've got yourself a nice sharp piece of aluminum foil that you're going to have to contend with. So yeah, I've cut my tongue. So go to thefeed.com/Leadville to get your gel of choice. Allow me to recommend Sturker, whether it is the 50-gram gel or the 50-gram bar, right? So, Hottie, I've finally thrown my Leadville race day kit, the one that Melisa was able to recognize because of those bright pink shoulders. It was a wash from dirt from Powerline, a little bit of mud from Sugarloaf, and a lot of oozing gel from the pockets. Not to mention some tears from hearing that Melisa had won the Leadville 100. The jersey that took all of that was from DNA, of course, which I am sure does not expect that its fabrics are also going to wind up being used as a napkin and a hanky, but they definitely do. Seriously, we want to thank DNA CEO Joe Sepulveda for being solidly behind this show and for coming up with our great podcast kit and our t-shirts, all of that. They've been wonderful to work with as a great sponsor, so thanks so much to DNA Cycling. You can find them at dnacycling.com.
So we're away from Sophia and Michaela, and now you're headed back inbound. You've gone through Twin Lakes Dam. You're starting to do that little nutso terrible little riser away from the dam, and instead of being in breakaway mode, now you're back in time trial mode, I would imagine, right? So take us through that effort as you're trying to get through the flats alone, or maybe not. Maybe you're running into people. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is all strategy, right? It's completely legal for women to be working with men, and I knew my best shot at making it to the finish line in the lead, because everybody else would be doing it, would be to find a good group of men. So I actually decided this on my way down Columbine. I was descending well, and I caught a group of guys maybe halfway down, and I said, this is it. So I slowed up on the descent and established a group there that I felt would help me get to the bottom of Powerline. And it did. It was great.
And you stayed with them the whole way over then to Powerline?
Yep.
The same guys. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Very nice. Anything to say about that new outward bound field that we ride through? There was a lot of hand wringing, some of which, we're guilty of. But any thoughts on that? Do you prefer it over the paved section that it replaces, or like the old way better?
I'm not sure if I have an opinion. I liked it. I thought it was fine. Yeah, it broke up the road. I think gearing is always kind of a challenge at this race, because if the majority of people are running a larger chainring than you, then the road could be a problem. So for me, it kind of settled down that debate a little bit, because it eliminated a bit of road.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Okay, so let's go to let's go to the power line. Tell us about that part of the race.
Just like everybody else, Powerline was the darkest point of my year. It was awful.
Not just of the day,
it was
the year.
So bad. I actually had started cramping down Columbine, which I knew was problematic because I was halfway, and that seemed a bit too early for that to be starting. So on Powerline, I made it up the bottom. That was super steep, but after I descended and then started up that second sort of incline part, I started cramping again, and there was nothing I could do. I just rode through it. I was in fear. I was terrified that everyone was going to catch me. So I'm like riding as hard as I can, and also literally verbally crying because I was in so much pain, and then it would settle. And then I kept rolling. I knew that I wasn't moving fast, but it was moving, which is good. My butt hurt so bad. It was like I couldn't stand up to relieve any pressure from my saddle because I would cramp. So I was just like in this misery circle of like over and over is like my butt, my legs, my butt, my body, my mind, my cramps. It was that for the whole time up.
And yet you did not ever clip out. You did not ever stop and stretch. You pedaled through this whole thing. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah.
Did you unclip even once during the day? Did you ever clip out of your pedals?
Yes.
From the starting line?
When I dropped my bottle on Keevans.
Oh, really?
I kind of went off into the woods a little bit because I was so like frazzled about it, and I clipped out, started to lose the group, and in that moment I should have gone back for my bottle, but I didn't. So that was the only time I.
But that was
out.
the only time on Keevans, just during the bottle fumble, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll go back, and then nope, I'm going after all.
Yep.
But you did not clip out during Columbine. You
Correct.
did not clip out on Powerline as you rode through cramps.
I wanted to.
Well, sure. But most of us, when we want to, do.
I had something very large on the line.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fatty pros don't unclip. Sorry, they just don't. They just keep going.
I understand that. I'm just trying to, I have cramped on Powerline as well. And, I got off my bike and I crouched and I stretched and I did a number of things to try to resolve the pain. Then I got back on my bike and kept on going. I didn't think that I was doing that, riding through that kind of misery was even an option.
Melisa, do you normally have to fight through cramps during a race? Are they something that kind of plague you normally?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a bit shocking how early they started, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a hard effort going out there, so your muscles are already saying, hey, what's this?
And I will say that in the fantastic recap video that Lifetime did, they got an amazing shot and audio of you as I think you were going up the Turquoise Lake Road toward Carter's. Is that right? And were suffering through some cramps that were bad enough that you were actually groaning out loud.
Yeah. So imagine you're, alone on Powerline, or imagine the situation that you're on Powerline going up and you start cramping and you're embarrassed. You have to get off your bike, crouch down, start crying a little bit, try to get through it. But instead of being alone, you are with a moto, an e-bike, a razor,
a helicopter
a drone,
overhead,
and literally a helicopter filming you go through this moment. Are you going to stop or are you going to ride through it?
Oh, I get your point. I would try to ride through it. I still think it's amazing that you did. And I will also say that one of the things that I really appreciated about the video that all of these people did capture is what I will call your lack of a game face. That you were suffering hard and it showed. And I think the relatability is there for those citizen riders of us, which is basically everyone, who has really felt everything that you were showing as you were fighting for this amazing win. We all feel like we're fighting for essentially the same thing. We're just racing a clock instead of people. It is the trying, or rather not trying, to necessarily hide it and look cool and calm as you are going for it. Is that a choice, or is that just, you're not a game face person?
I mean, when I say that I didn't look at my clock, or I only looked at it once that I can remember through the whole day, that's because I couldn't. I couldn't possibly look anywhere else or focus on any other thing than continuing forward and trying to win this race. There was no thought of looking cool, trying to calm down. There was no thought of that. I don't care how ugly I looked.
I mean, none of us necessarily look at our best.
I know, I was drooling in some of it.
Yeah.
Like it was like there was no, I had one brain cell and I was using it to propel me forward.
Well, people talk about giving 100%, and this is what that actually looks like, where everything you have was going into winning this race, and anything else, that can be decided or thought about later.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely feel like I don't remember the last hour of the race. I was on a different planet. I was blacked out. I was in a coma.
You've told us you did not race with power or heart rate. I imagine you had a head unit, though. What was on the head unit?
It was the map and elapsed time. Yeah. Not that I needed it. I know the course really well. Yeah. Particularly the boulevard, which I've spent 4 hours walking up before. I know every rock.
From Turquoise Lake and the climb to Carter, you lost a little time. I think 2 cramps, but you held on to it. And as you get to the boulevard, how are you feeling? What is left? What is going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, once again, bottom of the boulevard where it's rocky, cramped again.
Oh,
yeah. But made it to the top of that and sort of settled in and was good. And then I started seeing all those signs of previous winners, which the first one kind of caught me off guard. That was the first time I focused on something that wasn't trying to propel myself forward. And I was like, that's like my thought when I saw 2023 winner, Keegan Swenson and Sophia Gomez Villafana. And I was like, ugh, why are they reminding me of that? Like I was like, I had like, my thought process was like, does this mean she's going to catch me? I don't know. Like, I started thinking about her and I was scared. That's what it was for me.
And it is worth maybe mentioning, because this is new. I've never seen this before, and you may not have seen it yourself, Hottie, but they put up signs in the last few miles the last half mile or so of the boulevard, every 100 feet or so, of the winners from the most recent year up until the very first winners. So that as you go up the boulevard, you are seeing the names of champions. And I admit I was a little confused when I saw the first one as well, because I looked at that and I thought, what did Sophia somehow pass Melisa? Your mind isn't working.
My mind was doing the same thing. I was like, is this a sign that she's going to win again? Because I was so scared.
Oh, yeah. It is a sign that asks racers who are absolutely not thinking straight to think straight for a minute. Not going to happen. In retrospect, I think that it was a wonderful gesture.
I thought it was awesome. I loved it. And then I stopped looking when I was like halfway through, because I was like, I can't focus on that anymore. I got to focus on the task at hand.
I just hope they do it again next year.
Yeah.
Because I want to see your name as that first one that I see.
That would be very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you're on that home stretch, the pavement. You've done this before. You've done it even getting a podium in your age group, but you've never been there as the first woman. Tell us how that felt. Give us the sense of what it felt like that I am 100 feet from winning the Leadville 100.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I didn't allow myself to believe that it was possible until I could see it in front of me, because this meant so much to me that I didn't want to be let down like that. So when I saw that I was going to do it, and I went to the Razor. There's a video of this in the highlights where I didn't know she was filming me, but I went to the Razor and I asked Michelle Duffy, who was in the passenger seat, if there was anyone close, and she said no. I just that was it. I did it, and it hit me, and I kept rolling, and I don't know. It was like everything that I dreamed about. I literally dreamed about this moment. I would be driving in my car 3 years ago, and it would pop in my head like, oh, what would it be like to win Leadville? And I would just be driving along and start crying, because I was like, wow, that'd be so crazy.
It makes me think, there is a small group of women who are just as fit, just as experienced, just frankly as fast as you. But honestly, there was no one in the world who wanted this more than you. I think that is what brought you to the finish line first in the end.
Yeah, I wanted it so much. It was everything to me. And finishing with my hands up is going to be something that I never ever forget.
Yep.
Mostly because it scared me and I almost fell. But besides that, it was amazing.
Yeah, and a fast time too, folks. Melisa's 7-hour, 10-minute time is the 5th fastest time all time at the Leadville Trail 100. It's the 4th fastest winning time ever amongst pro women. So you're in great company there, Melisa. You know, you're talking about names like Annika Longved, Sally Bingham, Sophia, you. I mean, that is a great group.
Yeah, I mean, and this was with a slow start. It was, which to me, maybe that helped. Maybe I was able to climb Columbine so fast because I wasn't blown up by the opportunity to ride up Kevins with men. So you never know.
But we always do wonder, what if, 26 times now I've started this race, and every time at the end I do a little mental postmortem and I think, if only. And I wonder, as the champ, the person who finished faster than anyone else by a considerable margin, do you still do that? Do you still have the what ifs? And what are they, if so?
Yeah, I mean, what if I didn't cramp? It would be really cool to go for the record.
Amazing.
And, I just achieved my biggest goal in cycling, and I need to establish a new one. So that might be it. But it has to fuel a fire in order for it to be as impactful as this one was.
Yeah, the record is pretty remarkable. It's stood since 2015. Annika Longved, the only woman to break 7 hours at the Leadville Trail 100. That was the same year that Albin Licata set his record, so that was also a very fast year, but certainly within your reach. I mean, 10 minutes is...
Yeah, I think I was on pace for it up until, this is what I heard via the motos or whatever that was around me. So I think I was on pace, and perhaps if I hadn't have started cramping, it would have been possible, but who knows?
Yeah, certainly something to think about. Just as a thought, next year, 2025, will be your mom's 2,000-mile year. It would be pretty awesome if, when mom races for her 20th buckle, if daughter is racing for a new record in this race.
The only sad part of that is that I wish she could be there at the finish.
I can't help you with that.
I know.
There is
but that
no
was
way.
that was what I was thinking about. I was like, I want to get in my car and go drive to see you guys when I finished. But that wasn't possible with like doping control and all of that. But
oh, yeah, doping control. I forgot. Yeah, you have to pee in a cup now as part of your job. That is so strange. No one's ever made me do that. Everyone seems to be pretty confident that, yeah, he probably isn't doping to get that 10.5-hour finish.
It's not the best experience, but it's amazing. I think it's great that they're doing it. So,
well, Melisa, this has been an amazing storytelling, some great lessons, and I got to say, I couldn't be prouder. This was just, I have enjoyed every one of my finishes. Number 26 is going to be one of those that stands out, the brightest of all of those.
Melisa Rollins is your 2024 Lifetime Leadville 100 presented by Kinetic champion.
Well, that wraps up another Champions interview, I think. We don't do a lot of these, but Melisa, thanks so much for coming on the show and explaining your day to us. It was by the way, on season 4, episode 22, you came on the show and talked to us, and we asked you about what your favorite interval song now. I just want to ask real quick: is your song "Cowboys from Hell"? Is that still your song?
It still is. I listened to it the morning of Leadville.
Well, next year when you're coming up 6th Street, as you're finishing and winning, hopefully again, maybe we can get the announcer to play Cowboys from Hell.
Oh, that'd be incredible.
That'd be incredible, right?
I also want to say thank you to you guys because, like all of the listeners, I listen too. And I've learned so much about this race from you guys. So I have to say that I didn't win alone. I won with your guys' help too.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, if you want to comment on the show, just like Melisa did, try our webpage. You can leave us all the glorious comments and lather us all you want right there. We certainly appreciate it. And we'll take some criticisms too. We're fine with that at this point. Leadville100podcast.com is the show's webpage. It's also on YouTube, by the way, this show. Fatty did a great job this season in getting all the episodes up there on YouTube, so you can comment there. Or our Slack channel. We're happy to read about Melisa's glorious moments from you listeners as well on the Slack channel. That's probably the best spot because we can have a kind of a nice back and forth with you there. Leadville.fm/Slack is our Slack channel.
So good luck, everyone, in your Leadville training, your recovery from that race. Thanks for listening to our independent show for 7th season, and as of this one, 188 episodes. We're going to talk with you again later in person, on the bike, in Leadville, and at the starting line.
And your champion of round number 4 of the 2024 Lifetime Grand Prix presented by Mazda. Another big round of applause, Melisa Rollins!